Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer. I'm your host, Sarah Bueno. I'm a psychotherapist, teacher, consultant, and most importantly, a wounded healer, living and working in Skokie, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. This is a space for thought-provoking, unscripted conversations with people from all walks of life, united by the shared mission of healing ourselves while promoting healing in the world around us. Whether you're here to find inspiration, learn, or simply feel seen, you're invited on this journey of healing from the individual to the collective. Thanks for joining me. Oh my God, you guys. Has anybody seen that? Legally Blonde, the musical? I've never seen it, but I did watch the show. And that's the first thing that came to my mind because today is our 7-year anniversary of Conversations with a Wounded Healer. Can you believe it? I cannot. So much has changed for me in 7 years that I can't. I should have thought about that. What has changed in 7 years? I can't tell you all of that right now. But if you've listened to the podcast, you know. Or you can go all the way back to the beginning if you haven't. But to celebrate our big 7-year anniversary, I have a giveaway and it's going to be amazing. But I want to hear from you. So that's the catch. You don't have to pay anything to enter, but you do have to fill out a survey. So I have a survey. It's at tinyurl.com/CWH giveaway 25, CWHGIVEAWAY 25. And there's a shitload of stuff you can win. I reached out to a bunch of folks who've been on the podcast before to see who was willing to give us some free stuff. And we got some stuff for you. So first thing you're going to get a 17% discount on any workshop, group, or event hosted by moi, Head Heart Biz Therapy in 2025. I'm going to give you a copy of the Ripple Deck by The Right Use of Power, a signed copy of the book Healing Justice by Loretta Piles, a signed copy of Being White Today by Shelley Touchluck and Christine Saxman, a free spiritual reading with Virginia Castillo, a free coaching and consulting session with Mashara Winston, a free entry into the Right Use of Power Basics training, a free month of embodied transformation membership with Comfy Fitness, a lightning coaching session by Allison Stager, and lastly, either one of these two, 17% off Create Your Program or 50% off a one-to-one business strategy session with Annie Schusler. Woo! That's pretty exciting, right? So go to tinyurl.com/CWH giveaway 25. Fill out the little survey. It's mostly about you, but I also want to hear a little bit of feedback on the podcast. Would also love, ask you in there if you'd give us a little review love. And I hope you win. So that's that for the giveaway. Or actually, no, that's going to go through April 2nd. So you have from today, which is March 5th, until the end of the day, April 2nd, to fill that out. And then we're going to choose a winner who gets all of that stuff. It's going to be amazing. So today's guest is somebody who I got to meet and develop a relationship with via my Authentic Leaders group. Excuse me. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about the Authentic Leaders group. It's an 8-month program. And I have up to 10 practitioners who are leaders in a group practice in some sort of way. So whether it's they're the owner or clinical director or manager or supervisor or whatever, all of those folks are invited into an 8-month process. And there's some psychoeducation, there's some group activities, there's some like take home, I call it home play instead of homework. Oh my God, it's so cheesy. And we spend time essentially stepping into authentic leadership as much as we possibly can. And I met Cara in that group, and she's going to tell you a little bit about what that was like. This conversation, when our producer Andrea was listening to it, she's like, this is a really good example of how it is that you work with people when you work with them on an individual level. So I just wanted to also tell you that, like, you can work with me if you want to. Right now, I'm working with leaders. So, whether you're a group practice owner or in a leadership role in some way, those are the people that are my jam. And you can find out more about working with me at www.headheartbiztherapy.com/consultation. What else do I need to tell you? Oh, we also reference my Burnt Out Practice Owner series that I released in 2024 that talks about all the challenges of being a practice owner. So we reference that. If you missed any of that, you can certainly go back into the podcast feed and listen to all those episodes. And two super exciting announcements. One thing I'm just going to tell you a snippet of right now, and then a couple weeks you'll hear all of it. But shortly, I'm going to be launching a platform called Group Practice Revolution. And there's going to be a podcast component to that as well. So in the feed in a couple weeks, you're going to see something dropping called Group Practice Revolution. You'll be like, what the fuck is this? Don't worry, you'll get to know more about it then. But I'm very excited about it. And then the last super exciting announcement is we are going to be on YouTube. Yes, I have finally acquiesced. I truly, absolutely hate recording videos because I hate seeing myself on video. It's why I created a podcast in the first place. So I'm so frustrated that everything's moving to video, but I'm acquiescing and we're going to be posting full hour-long videos of conversations with a wounded healer onto YouTube. We're going to post them. I know this is a little confusing, but we're going to post the full hour-long episodes on the day that the part 2 of our guest episode drops. I know it sounds a little confusing. You'll get the hang of it. I'm guessing most of you will continue to just listen to the podcast. But if you are really a video person and you just want to see my weird little face, you can go over there and find it. You'll get the hang of it. I believe in you. Okay, on to today's guest. So today's guest, actually, let me tell you a little bit about our convo first. So Cara and I spent some time exploring her journey to becoming a therapist and the ways that she's navigated things like self-doubt and lack of confidence and imposter syndrome through her career. And we even do a little smidge of a NARM sesh with her. And we discuss a lot of the intuitive parts of being a therapist that go alongside the learned skills that we develop in school. And Cara also shares a bit about her leadership journey and how it was to work together in my Authentic Leaders group. So, without further ado, Cara Chae, LCPC, is a psychotherapist working in a group practice in Chicago. Her professional interests include working with attachment-related trauma like parenting, relationships, and childhood wounds. More recently, she's begun learning how to support clients with neuroplastic symptoms. Cara's second full-time job is parenting her 2 elementary school-aged children while trying to simultaneously take care of herself too. So please enjoy my conversation with the lovely Cara Chae. Hello, Cara. Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Should we let the audience know that you're nervous? Should
Yeah,
we tell them that?
sure.
Yeah. And I told you before we started recording, I do love popping podcast cherries. So that's what
Mhm.
you're doing today. So this is brave.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm happy to be able to
Yeah.
provide you with that experience.
It's because it's all about my pleasure and enjoyment, of course. Right. Um, so to let folks in on how you got here. So I am friends with Farah Beg. Is it Beg? I've never even
Mhm.
asked her how she pronounced her last name. Beg.
Yeah.
And you work for Farah. And I have my Authentic Leaders group, the first round,
Mhm.
and Farah was like, I got a gal for you. And so we spent 8 months together, and you were the one who reached out the most with like questions and like inquiry, and like you were just always digging into something and like really taking a bite out of what I was, giving to the group. And I don't know, I felt such a, not that I wasn't resonating also with other folks, but our conversations really helped me get to know you so well. And I dig what you are doing in the world and what you're thinking about and who you're trying to be. And so, I asked you to be on the podcast and you were like,
Yeah.
but here we are.
We are here.
Yeah. So do you want to tell people a little bit more about you other than you're anxious to be here?
Sure. And I want to add, I've listened to your podcast long before really even connecting the dots of maybe how you might have known Cara
Mm.
professionally. It all just kind of happened. And then I learned she was in that group with you, the group practice owners group. And
Mhm.
um, I think I found your group and instead
Oh,
of her,
you
like
did
the
first?
authentic leaders.
Oh,
Yeah. Because on
cool.
the pod, you would advertise on it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but a little bit about me. I'm a counselor, LCPC by training, and I'm a therapist in a group private practice called Inner Voice Psychotherapy. So it's owned by Farah Bay that we've mentioned. And I've been working there for about 7 years and doing therapy and then some kind of operations, onboarding things for the last 5 years.
Yeah. So, therapist origin story. What led you to become a therapist? Which I think we're all superheroes.
Ah, okay. I think I was intrigued by the world of psychology. And being 18, like that was a kind of an easy major to select, right? Some curiosity about what that could be. I think I had some lofty ideas about like forensic psychology.
Mhm.
And then after undergrad, I took a couple years working. I worked in schools as like what they call a SICA now or an aide because I
Mm.
wasn't sure if I wanted to be a teacher
Mhm.
or a counselor. And that let me know I didn't want to be a teacher, that experience.
Mhm.
Um, and honestly, kind of impulsively Googled like counseling programs or master's programs. And this was in like 2007 before I knew anything about Google and sponsored ads. And
Right.
the the Chicago school popped up.
So, SEO brought you to the Chicago school.
Honestly, I was like
Unsurprising.
23. I don't know, just so
Wow.
young making these decisions, right, of where to
Uh-huh.
go to grad school. But I was curious about counseling. I thought I wanted to work with kids. I thought I wanted to be able to support children. Um, so I like came to Chicago, checked it out, liked it, and I think I was just ready for a change. So I was in Nashville originally. That's where I'm from.
Oh, I
So I
didn't
moved to
realize that.
Chicago. Yeah, yeah. Moved to Chicago for grad school, honestly thinking I would go to grad school and then go home. But I met a man and he ended up becoming my husband in my program, and he will not leave Chicago. So
Wait, so is he a counselor too?
he doesn't currently work as a counselor, but that's his training and licensure.
I didn't realize that. Oh,
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
Wow.
One of the few men in the program, right?
Right. And you snagged
um,
him.
I did. Um, and so stayed in Chicago. After graduating, it was hard to find work right away, and so I eventually started working for an employee assistance program,
Mhm.
as many do,
Yep.
and worked there for a few years. Kind of tried a different hats. I was doing kind of those intake, answering the phone. Then I started doing some formal referral work where folks who are required to seek out some counseling or some substance
Mm.
abuse treatment for work. I would do essentially some case management. Um, and I feel like this is going very long, but
You're good.
I
You're good.
I did EAP work for a number of years. I think because I was scared to practice. I was scared to be a real therapist. I had some doubts about my
Mm.
abilities to do that. But eventually, it was actually another therapist who kind of asked me if I would be interested in joining the group practice that I'm currently at, and
Mm.
really like cheerleaded me. She's like, I think you'd be great. Like, come in. Like, let's get you in here. So I did that. I did both part time for a while, EAP work, and then worked at the practice on the side. Um, and then built up to full time, left the EAP job and went full time at the practice. Um, I started there in 2017 and I've
Mm.
been full time in therapist language since about 2019.
Yeah. And where do you live that we're hearing the train in the background?
In Jefferson Park. I'm like
Oh,
I'm near like a freight line in
Oh,
addition to the
okay.
metro. So I'm sorry, you can hear
No,
it.
it's totally fine. I was just curious. I'm like, "Wait, you're not, like, way out in the suburbs, are you?" Yeah, okay.
Mm-mm.
That's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Can we talk about doubt? Self-doubt?
yeah, that's probably why we're here.
Right? Because I think
Yeah.
and what we talked about just before starting recording that I wanna let listeners know is, like, what I hear from you, I hear from other therapists a lot, and so you are the brave soul who's gonna say the scary shit out loud so that all of the listeners can resonate, right?
Mhm.
Feel a connection and also be like, "Oh, well, she thought it was scary and she did it and she's exploring things and I guess I can do it too." So yeah, tell us about doubt and how you worked through that.
I mean, I'm still working through it, so I'll let you know. But in the beginning, I'm really good at school. Like I can school
Mhm.
with the best of them,
Yeah.
right?
I've no doubt.
Um, and I don't mean any disrespect in saying this, but like anybody can go get a master's in
Yeah.
not anybody. Let me think of access and be respectful and talk about privilege, but like
Mhm.
getting a master's degree if you can get in the door.
Yeah.
And so I think I just had a lot of like, okay, I did it, but like that's not that big of a deal. Everything was like, that's not that big of a deal.
Mhm.
Um, I also thought I had to get it all just right. Like I had to know the theories
Mm.
just right. I had to know who the originator of the theory was. I had to get the interventions right. Because school is very intervention, evidence based
Yep.
type stuff. And so that held me back a lot. I kind of thought like, I'm not good enough, or, who am I? It
Mm.
was also hard to get a job. I would try to get work in places that served children, but they wanted folks with a little bit more experience.
Mm.
Um, my grad school placement, while it was in schools, it was under the guise of like academic counseling. So it wasn't as,
Mm.
I don't know, that made me feel like it was less somehow. Like, what's going on that whatever I've got and I'm bringing the education I got is not enough.
Mm.
Um, I so that was kind of that first doubt of like, okay, I got the degree, but like, do I know what I'm doing? Um, I can't get hired. I knew no one. Like what I know now
Right.
is that connections really help, and I knew no one from Chicago. Um, my now husband like worked in hospitals and worked in community mental health, but and I it just that didn't feel right for me. Honestly, don't remember if I how many of those types of things I applied to. Um, I was also on the fence at the time of like, am I going to stay in Chicago or go to Tennessee? What's going on with this relationship kind of thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and then it was kind of the same thing in EAP. So when I was working in, it's like a call center environment. Like you know these places like ComPsych is where I worked for a number of years, and um, you do build like your intake skills, which is great.
Mhm.
Um, and then just little by slowly, I was kind of learning new things, but I still kind of had this doubt of not being like good enough or not being like, yeah, I can do that, but I can't do this, or but I've never done that. So that's a little bit of how my brain, some of the roads that my brain would take me down.
Yeah. And I hope that people know this, but you clearly didn't know it at the time. When you graduate with your master's, nobody knows what they're doing.
hmm I took on a couple interns this year, and that was just coming through loud and clear for them as well. So it clearly hasn't changed.
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. It's interesting because 'cause I've been teaching at Loyola since 2015, and I graduated from there in 2009, and the clinical we didn't even have a clinical track. So literally when I graduated, all I had was the experience that I'd had from my internship. We did not learn clinical interventions. Everything was centered around theory or policy. And so when I
Mhm.
had my first client in community mental health, I was great at intake because that's I my internship was in an addiction treatment center. So I was great at groups. I was great at assessments, but I didn't know how to do individual therapy at all. And I had
Mhm.
my first intake session, and then I ran up. We had this like big giant room with all the desks in it. So like, you go downstairs to see your clients and then you'd come up and that's the bullpen where everybody is. And I ran up into the bullpen and I'm like, what the fuck do I do with this kid? And like everybody was so sweet. They were like giving me these worksheets and this and that, like all these different ideas that
Mhm.
I could do. And it was such a shock to me at the time because I unsurprising to anyone listening, I err on the side of more confidence than less confidence. And so I was kind of like, oh yeah, I'm going to be fine. I'm totally going to be able to do
Mm.
this because, I've had experience. It was such a shock to recognize how little I knew. It's not like
Mhm.
I was overconfident, but I thought it was appropriate, new therapist confidence. And so I try to tell my students that all of the time. They're getting even better prepared now because now they have like a micro practice track, and I'm teaching the micro practice course right now, which is really fun to like, try to show them what it looks like in real life instead
Mm.
of just like reading the book. But like, I mean, I hope anybody out there who's listening who is like, I've always wanted to be a therapist, but don't know if I could do it. Like, you can. It's all of these
Mhm.
things are learnable. What I think, two things that are most important in that you can't teach are having the passion. And then the second thing is having like the art of it, which I think is related to intuition. What do you think about that?
Mhm. I definitely agree with that latter part, and that's so hard to have though in your early to mid 20s. It's like
Say that
I
louder for the youngins in the back who wanna go straight into private practice.
oh my god.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, you just don't know who you are. Like you're
yeah.
often probably dealing with your own stuff, and there's maybe those few that have been fortunate enough to maybe have access to therapy or who just are wired a little bit different.
Mhm.
But I mean, your brain's not fully developed by the time you're getting out of some grad programs, right?
If you
So
go straight through, yeah. Mhm.
yeah, if you just go straight, it's kind of wild.
Yeah.
As a parent thinking about like what we expect our kids to be capable of at like
Right?
18, but that's another
Yeah.
conversation. Um,
Mhm.
so that art, that doesn't come at first. That's not there in the beginning. Or I didn't, in my experience, it was not art. I was trying to be perfect. I was trying to follow the rules.
Yeah.
I was trying to know it all. Like I felt like I had to be the expert in the
Yeah.
space. I had to know and prepare for like every direction that a conversation could go.
Mhm.
So yeah, there was a lot of anxiety and perfectionism in my way.
So what supported that shift? Because I know you still question yourself, right? But I I'm get so this is my impression of you. My impression is that you you're so humble, but that you know what you're doing as a therapist, and you're
Mm,
starting to think, "Okay, now how can I challenge myself to learn even more about something really specific?"
mm,
And then the questioning for you I see right now is more in the, like, leadership realm, like, how do I know how to, like, deal with all these different leadership things that pop up, right? So, as a clinician, let's just start there. What helped you get to the other side of, I don't know anything and I have to prepare for every single situation, and now where I'm guessing most people that walk in the door, you're gonna be like, "I can figure this out."
mhm.
Is that a fair assessment, I guess, first?
I think that yes, like especially that first part of trying to walk that line of being humble, but also confident and knowing that I'm good at the things that I do.
Mhm.
Um, and that question about like where to go next, and the other another piece as you were talking, I was thinking like the things that I'm good at doing are also very taxing. It's like
Mm.
the type of more relational or attachment based therapy that I do and that I'm good at and really do enjoy. It's just taxing. Um,
Can we pull that thread?
yeah,
Why?
because I I really connect, and I think a part of what I'm good at is it's a little bit of a caregiving, like
Mhm.
nurturing piece that I can provide that is often missing in the experiences of the clients that I really do well with.
Mhm.
I'm also a parent of young children, so I do a lot of nurturing and caregiving all the other hours of the day that I'm not being a therapist. So
Yeah.
it's not just the work, and I truly do have really good containment and boundaries around the work
Yeah.
that I do with my clients. Um, but it's relationship, and then parenting is relationship where, I
Mhm.
hold more of the responsibility. I have to hold a lot in both of those spaces.
Mm. Can we do a little NARM with this?
Ooh, sure.
And, like, yeah, I'm not gonna, like, psychoanalyze you or anything, but, I mean, one of the, because I relate to that in many ways, and NARM really helped me soften that energetic, like, mm, weight, right? It's just, like, this need to
Mhm.
sort of make sure that you are, taking care of yeah, I hear the nurturing, but it's like
Mhm.
holding, right? And
Yeah.
it does take a lot of energy to hold, and
Mhm.
so one of the concepts, that we learn in NARM, we talk about the 50-50 of being 50% with yourself and
Mhm.
50% with the client, so that you're not putting 100% into the client, and you can, like, I literally would force myself to sit back, because when I get, like, way too invested, I start, like, leaning forward and, like, really getting into it. So I would literally force
Mhm.
myself to lean back, and whether you wanna answer this is up to you, because I don't know how deep it's gonna go, but if I were supervising you, the NARM
Mhm.
question would be, what what are you afraid will happen if you don't put that much energy into nurturing your client?
Mm. I hope you can edit out this silence while I think about it.
Or that silence is
Um,
really important.
well, the fear, I think of the fear more as a parent. I don't know that I haven't thought of it as something I'm afraid of not being able to do as a therapist, but maybe, I mean, maybe just that they won't, feel tended to,
Mm.
um, they they won't, yeah, like, they won't feel tended to, they won't feel seen. Um,
Mm.
yeah, it's like you might reenact something, re-injure something of because that may have been their experience all along of not being nurtured or seen.
Mm. So in your mind, it's either you lean in and give it all, or they're not gonna feel it at all.
I don't know. I think it comes a little naturally. I don't think I think about it so much. I'm trying to for the purpose of answering your
Yeah.
question.
Well, that's the
Um,
thing, like, and I'll just I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I get really excited about this, because I do think that this is a piece that's contributing to our burnout in the therapy field,
mm,
and I read an article, and it's in one of my trainings that I talk about, that there was a quote that said, "Because we all come from whatever fucked up backgrounds we come from, which is the reason we go into this in the first place, uh, our preoccupations become our occupations." And so, right? I know, right? So
yeah,
we are naturally good at it, but that doesn't mean it's sustainable, and it's right that you can continue living that way.
yeah,
So I do think that's why I wanted to pull that thread, because I am certain there are at least 80% of the listeners who are going, "Oh shit, I do that too."
yeah. And it's more of the all or nothing perfectionist, goodist, right? Like, I have to
Yep.
be the good therapist,
Mhm.
I have to meet all their needs, and, you know,
Right.
I don't working with my own, like, stuff with a client is still something I'm working on, and that, like, I enjoy getting consultation on when there's maybe something specific that's going on. between me and a client. So I also want to get better at watching that in real time. I think I'm decent at it, but
Mhm.
it's just a skill to keep
Mhm.
building in life.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think I'm decent at, I don't know about that whole 50-50 concept, right? I'm
Yeah.
probably somewhere else, but you have to pay attention to what's going on with you to
Yep.
really, really connect.
And I'll just say too, like I spend a lot of time supervising and consulting and all that sort of stuff. And so I all of this happens to me too, right? I have my own consultants and supervisors. God bless you, Helen. I just went back to see Helen recently because I need her. So this happens to me too. So I don't want anybody listening to think like, oh, Sarah has this all together and figured out. But like, no, I need somebody to do the same thing that I'm doing for you. I think of it as we're all holding each other.
Mm, yeah. And someone else is going to be able to see something that you can't,
Right.
or, has that experience that you don't have.
Right. And and for me, I think it is because I have that same experience of leaning in so hard. And for me, it definitely shifted my work with clients in a way that it made it easier to see clients. Um, where I was leaning in too hard the most was with being a practice owner. And
Mm,
so that's one of the things that's why I wanna work with practice owners right now and leaders in therapy organizations because that almost every single therapist is doing too much emotional labor in their leadership role,
mm, I could see that.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I haven't really worked another small business, but it's one of the, so I can't compare it to that, but rarely in a lot of spaces are the leaders or the managers kind of thinking about maybe your emotional reaction or your trauma or what you've got going on in your life before they give you some feedback about your
Mhm.
performance or call you in for a meeting or demand that you be somewhere. Like we don't do that.
I mean, we try to as much as we can, but also we got a business to run.
Yeah, I mean, like, we don't do it without emotional consideration. We're so
Oh, yeah, oh, I
considerate.
see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Almost
Yeah.
almost too much. So to your point, like,
Yeah.
overextending a little bit that, the
Mhm.
emotional side in our leadership work.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, being a boss was the harder emotional toll
Mhm.
than being there for like, therapy is honestly one of the easiest things that I do now, but
Mhm.
all of the other stuff that I do takes a lot more mental energy, like emotional gymnastics, just, like, creativity sort of
Mm,
stuff. How do you feel about contrasting your therapy role with your leadership role?
yeah. I think that, um, there have been times where I've felt that way, but I'm trying to shift a little bit clinically, and so I am finding the therapy a little taxing right now, but not necessarily in a bad way. Like I'm trying to learn some new
Mhm.
skills. I find my leadership role a little bit gray in that I don't it's kind of this dual relationship. I don't like directly oversee people, but I oversee systems. And
Mhm.
so if something isn't, if someone's not um scheduling their appointments properly or getting their notes done quickly enough or kind of following the protocol for this, I have to address that with them. And so it's not, I find that a little bit taxing, and the relationship I'm finding right now isn't super strong between me and some of the other clinicians.
Yeah.
um, and so that balance of, if you only hear from me, if I only email you when there's a problem, you're not gonna wanna get my emails.
Right.
That um, dings the relation. That's a lot of what I learned in your leadership group was kind of about the importance and my responsibility, that I have more responsibility to build that relationship and balance those
Mhm.
scales a little bit. Um, I find that piece taxing, kind of the social
Mhm.
part of leadership, or the
Yeah.
interpersonal part, let's say.
Mhm. Yeah. And so is there anything, I'm putting you on the spot here, so it's okay if you don't have really an answer, but what's different about how you're leading or you're approaching your role from when you started the group to
Mhm.
now?
Yeah. Um, I am I am much more aware of maybe when something is activating me a little bit, and I try to take a beat before responding, or maybe get another set of eyes before I respond. I'm trying to assume good intent, like,
Hmm.
more often than not.
Mm.
And the power piece was a big piece where you say the person in up power has that additional responsibility, that 150% responsibility for the relationship.
Yep.
And so I'm trying to keep that in mind. And so if I do have to send someone an email, um, I'm trying to start with connection and then ask about the thing, or schedule a meeting. Like, we're a very virtual practice, and so
Mm.
there's people I don't ever see, and except for maybe at our social outings. And so you have to make that extra effort to connect when you're virtual,
Mhm.
with your colleagues. And so I'm trying to do that a little bit more.
Hmm. And has anything shifted in the way you're received or how interactions go?
TBD, reviews are coming up at
Okay.
the end of the year, so we'll find out, because
That's funny.
we do ask staff for that reflection, for that feedback.
Yeah.
Um, I do think that my like I can't remember if you've said this too, but like I desperately want people to like know my heart,
Mhm.
but not have to remind them of it every time I speak to them. And so I want them to be
Yeah.
able to hold in their awareness that like who I am as a human, even if I'm telling you something that you don't want to hear, or even if I'm frustrated with you for not doing this thing that you were supposed to do.
Mhm.
Um, and that's really important to me.
Mhm.
But it's also something I can't know. I can't know if people are keeping that in mind or perceive me in that way that I desire them to perceive me.
And I think that's one of the loneliest parts of leadership because they don't owe you that.
That's another thing from your group that I learned is like, what needs do you have, and are you expecting the wrong people to meet those needs for you? Like,
Yeah.
it's not your staff's responsibility, or honestly even your coworkers, if your peers, to meet certain emotional needs that you have.
Mhm. And that is so challenging in the therapy field because I think, and a lot of people are probably gonna be super pissed at me for saying this, but I do think that we go into this not consciously, but I think it's the same article that I'm referencing again, talks about the narcissistic gratifications that we get out of being a therapist,
Mhm.
and it's using narcissism not as, like, narcissistic personality disorder, but just, like, a sense of self and ego and all that.
Yeah.
Right, so we do, right? Like, and this everybody has this, right? Like,
Mhm.
if you do a good job and somebody says, "Great job," that's a narcissistic gratification.
Mm.
So when our clients succeed, that's a narcissistic gratification that we get, and
Mm.
yet, if those aren't conscious and we're not recognizing that that's what we're doing, that's when it can be dangerous.
Mm. Yeah, so
Yeah.
true. No notes.
10 out of 10. Um,
Yeah.
well, let's see, where do I wanna go next? Let's do the healer questions.
Okay.
Would you consider yourself a healer?
I struggle with this language. You know, I've heard you ask so many people and heard all the different responses. I don't consider myself as like an individual a healer more than the next person, but I do think that the work that we do is healing, and that healing happens in relationships. So I think healing does happen in the work that I do.
Mhm. Okay, I'll take it. Fair. No surprises. And how about wounded healer?
Yeah, who among us isn't wounded, right? So we all
Mhm.
have wounds. So, and I don't know that you achieve healed or,
Right.
so I don't know if it's a permanent state of wounded, but
Mhm.
we don't make it out of childhood without some wounds, and we don't make it through life without some wounds.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. Everybody who tells me like, "Oh, I love my parents. I had a great childhood." I'm always like, "Give me 6 months and we will change that story." No, I'm
There's
just kidding.
the narcissistic, what did you call it when you finally
Narcissistic grati
crack it?
Yes!
Like, "Yeah,
Yes!
I told you.
It
I
is.
knew
It's
it."
so it is. Oh my god, that's so fun. It's so true. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Whew. Well, what's next? What's next for Cara? I
For
know
sure.
you had come to me and were kind of like, "I don't know what I need. I don't know what I want." And I was like, "Then let's sit with those questions together, right? And I can
Mhm.
ask you questions to hopefully stimulate you thinking about what you want." So, where
Yeah.
are you right now? And will you mind sharing that process with listeners?
Yeah, completely. I've been at Inner Voice for 7 years, and I'm content in a group practice. I don't have right now business owning goals, especially after listening to your podcast.
You're welcome.
What I worked through a bit in therapy was learning that it wouldn't it's not true that I can't do things. So I used to believe that I couldn't do things. And now that I know that's not true, that I could have a private practice, I can even run a group practice. I could do it.
Yep.
The question for me is, what do I want to do? And that's
Boom.
really hard. That's not an easy question for me.
Right.
I I very much identify with my role as a parent. That's really important to me. And so my kids are 5 and 9, so they're not maybe in their highest needs. I don't know. I haven't had any prior to them, so I don't know what's ahead. But it's also that question of like, there's a little more flexibility or freedom than there was when
Mhm.
they were babies, but I also like to hang out with them. And so there is this question for me of what do I want to do? Um, there are things at my job that need to be done and that I'm currently tasked with doing. And so that question is, do I still want to do those things? Um, and then more specifically, I I've recently gotten into professionally kind of working in the world of like mind body symptoms or conditions. The language on this varies. I just went to a conference where they more formally changed their name to the Association for Treatment of Neuroplastic Symptoms. So they're agreeing to call them neuroplastic symptoms. Um,
Instead of chronic pain?
instead of, yeah, it embodies chronic pain. So chronic pain is a
Mm.
neuroplastic symptom, is what they'd
Mm.
say. So they've been called mind body conditions, TMS, psychophysiologic disorder, psychosomatic, conversion
Mhm.
disorder is what our
Mhm.
DSM might call it. So this is a new world for me that I'm curious how I can support people with those symptoms and presentations because the cross section is high between
Mhm.
people with trauma, their own like people pleasing, perfectionism, codependency, and these symptoms. So my like ideal client already is probably presenting with some of these symptoms. And so now
Yeah.
it's like, what do I want to do with this?
Mhm.
And then what does that mean for the practice that I'm at or the roles that I currently
Mhm.
occupy, the responsibilities that I currently have,
Yeah. Well, what are you learning?
about these conditions or
Yeah.
that. All right.
I
So
know how to boil it
I know,
down.
I know, right? Um, you know, there are certain conditions that fall under this neuroplastic symptom. Chronic pain is one of them. But the conditions like IBS,
Mm.
migraines, fibromyalgia, These,
Mm.
those are just a few examples of conditions that don't have a structural cause, right? So when you get
Mhm.
hurt, if you break a bone, if you sprain your ankle, injuries heal. So we do have pain from an injury, but that injury will heal.
Mhm.
If we have pain that's ongoing that becomes chronic, it's a learned symptom. Our brain has learned the symptom of pain, and our brain will allow that symptom to persist. And that cycle of pain is um, fueled by and powered by fear, by stress. So if you're just chronically living in a stressful situation, or if you're afraid of your symptoms, that fear just allows that cycle to continue and that symptom to persist. And doing some emotional work, allowing for some emotional expression, some distress tolerance skills, unpacking things that have been repressed can help reduce those symptoms and eliminate some of those symptoms and conditions. And that just blows my mind. Um, and it just excites me, and it makes me want to like shout it from the rooftops and, help other people be able to heal from these conditions. It can really be limiting in their lives.
Yeah. Well, did you hear, it was Anne and I, my co-host, did the interview with John Gassianica. Did you listen to that one?
I think I did. I remember saying something about chronic pain not that long ago.
I think,
Yeah, and I
yeah,
think
probably
he
about a
was.
year ago that it came out. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's
I
shocking.
mean,
It feels
time,
like it wasn't
right?
that long ago.
Yeah, because yeah,
Yep.
it's interesting after because he offered a session for me and
Mhm.
what and I know that it's also like for me, I think it's hormonally related. And so I'm curious about like the intersection between hormones and
Mhm.
all this like because what you're saying makes sense in terms of like the brain learns that when I feel pain, I should be anxious and I should be scared. And so when I'm
Mhm.
anxious and scared, then that means I should have pain. And it's like the cycle.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. And so what in our session, I was experiencing like back pain. And what I realized it's because my leg muscles are so tight, they were pulling on my back. And
Mm.
what's changed since then, because the back pain went away for a while and then it came back because my muscle tightness has returned. But now that I know that it's just because of muscle tightness, I'm not scared and I'm not worried anymore.
Yeah.
So I have other things to be scared and worried about that I'm trying to not freak out about, but
Uh-huh.
that's changed everything.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
we just had one, like, 20-minute session.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Our brain can it sets up a lot of automatic processes, right? It's kind of the classic
Mhm,
riding a bike. Like once you learn how to ride a bike, you'll never forget. So our
mhm.
brain can set up similar automatic processes to signal pain. And there are
Right.
ways to rewire and interrupt that automatic process so that you don't have the
Mhm.
symptom.
It's kind of amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. I'm excited, and that's kind of you know, the question is how do I incorporate this into my work, or
Mhm.
is this kind of the direction that I want to go? This could open up opportunities for like groups or educational. I
Mhm.
feel really passionate about letting other clinicians know about this because
Yeah.
like many, I had my own experience with it, and if both my doctor and my therapist did not know about these neuroplastic symptoms, or there may be a stress
Yep.
component or an emotional component, that
Yep.
there wasn't a structural cause for my symptoms, who knows where I'd be. And
Right.
so even just a therapist knowing, hey, like I heard about this thing, and I think you should ask your doctor about this, or can
Yep.
we try doing this in addition to the doctor's appointments that you have and the medications that you're taking, and just try it out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. It's very
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming to the end of the hour. I'm curious, if you could share with your younger therapist self, some advice, some hope, some anything, what would you want to tell her?
Go to therapy. Don't wait.
Yeah.
Start now.
Mhm.
And just like ask for help. I think
Mm.
mentorship is something that I didn't know how to get.
Mhm.
I think I wanted someone to, I thought like, well, if I'm good enough, someone will maybe
Mm.
call out to me or connect with me. I don't
Oh, how
know.
cute. I'll just sit here. Someone will want to mentor me,
Ugh, I
surely.
know, right? Isn't
So
that
cute.
like,
Yeah.
so just be a little more assertive or ask or see what's needed.
Mhm.
Who knows if I would have listened, but that's what I would say. Um,
Yeah.
and maybe try it a little bit sooner, right? So maybe if I had tried, um, I was gonna say private practice. I don't really know that I knew all that much about like group practices in like
Yeah.
what the early 2010s. There weren't
I think it
as
was different back then too.
right, exactly. So it's kind of
Yeah.
hard to do a little bit of that, but it'd probably be just like go to therapy and like you can do it. Like bigger dummies than you have done this is a phrase I've learned since that time.
Bigger dummies. There, that's a pull quote. Bigger dummies than you have done
Yeah.
this. So have faith in yourself. That's hilarious.
hmm Yeah, it's have faith in yourself is like the nicer way to say that.
Oh, amazing. So you heard it here first, folks. Go to therapy.
Go to therapy.
Yeah.
Um, it's and just for fun, like let's see what's in there, and if when you
Yep.
finish that therapy, try a different kind of therapy. Like there's
Yep.
always, I like thinking of it almost as like exploratory surgery sometimes. Like
Mhm.
you can just go in there and see what's coming up because what you bring to one therapist, they'll find something and kind of ask a question that pulls you in a direction maybe you didn't even
Mhm.
think you were going to go. And I really love when, as a therapist, when clients are willing to explore that side road. Like this maybe wasn't where you were going, but when you were
Yeah.
talking, this is where I was going. Would you
Yep.
come with me?
Yeah,
Like you said, can I
exactly.
pull that thread a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah, I think about, and this is probably a topic for another conversation, but I think about like the future of AI and how I am certain somebody is out there trying to create an AI therapist.
Mhm.
But what you said is right, that it's the person, and because
Mhm.
the person has their own life experiences, they're going to pull on a different thread than maybe another person. So I
Exactly.
personally am not concerned about an AI bot being a better therapist than me.
Mhm.
So if you are, go get more training because then you become an even better therapist and you'll beat the AI bot. There should
Right.
be like therapy offs between a bot and a therapist.
Oh God.
That would be a fun game
We would
show I
just
would
be, but we
watch.
would just be training it.
That's true. Fuck those bots.
I don't know. I mean, that's another piece that we didn't even touch on is part of my thinking is just about the direction of the field and
Yeah.
what's gonna
Mhm.
be a sustainable path in this field. Both
Yep.
trying to like forecast what the demands and the needs are gonna be, but then coming back, but like, what do I want to do?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I guess I want listeners to hear like the process is what's important. The process of asking the questions, of the inquiry, of the reaching out for mentorship, all of that is
Mm.
where the jewels are.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's
Mhm.
hard when you like don't know anybody.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't think I've ever had a negative experience of,
Mhm.
reaching out to someone and
Mhm.
um yeah, and now even more so now so a lot of people have presence on the internet. Like
Mhm.
you're no mystery, Sarah. Like I know what I'm getting when I reach out to you because of how you put yourself out on the internet.
Mhm.
Um
Should we tell listeners how you told me I was too much?
wondered if that was going to come up.
I
thought I was
didn't
worried.
even remember. I didn't even
I was
remember.
worried you might be a little too much.
Right.
But that's my stuff, right? Which you
Right.
know and knew. But you're being, in all seriousness, you're being too much or yourself, that what I thought was too much or was worried was too much actually just gave me permission to come forward a little bit. So all the,
Yeah.
which is kind of how you hooked me in here, is like, people need to hear
Yep.
someone else in that. You're
Yep.
modeling a space
Right.
that maybe someone hasn't seen before. And who knows who you're gonna
Yeah.
hook.
Right. I think about that all the time because the people who end up in my role are usually extroverts. We're usually confident. We present ourselves as if we have all of our shit together. And of course, on this show, I've shown everyone very clearly how I don't have my shit together and, how I've learned more over the years. But I do think that's why I wanted you here to like people who do struggle with confidence, who do struggle with believing and trusting and tapping into their own power. Like, you bring important things to this world. Just because the world has said that the way I present is more marketable and is more potentially a commodity, that doesn't mean that I'm any better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Where can everybody find you if they want to reach out and they're going to be like, you know what? I need a mentor like you who gets me.
Girl, I am barely on the internet, but email. Is
They can
email?
find
Are
you
we
at
allowed to
Inner
say
Voice
email?
then. Yeah.
LinkedIn. I technically have a profile on LinkedIn, and I'll get an
Mm-hmm.
email if you message me there.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, Inner Voice is innervoicepc.com is the website if you want to go see what my face looks like and read my bio.
Amazing. Well, Cara, I appreciate you. I'm so glad that you and I deepened our relationship and have a connection. And I have no concerns about the future of your success, whatever you end up doing.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really grateful to you and all you put out there, especially about group practices. Like, if people have not listened to that podcast series,
Yeah.
run. Go
Thank you.
listen.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
burnt out practice owner stuff. Yep.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thanks to our guest for an amazing episode. To find out more about our guests, you can visit www.headheartbiztherapy.com/podcast. You can find me at Head Heart Biz Therapy on both Facebook and Instagram. Thanks to the Jules Creative Marketing team for video editing, to Liam O'Donnell for our album art, and to Ben Mueller for our theme music. And I'm your host, Sarah Buino. Until next time, bye-bye.